Okay, right. So I'm going to start filming actually a series now. So this is going to be the first part in the series. So I'm going to call the series End Times. I can't think of anything inventive, to be honest. I don't want to give too much away, you see, by giving it a name. It's one where you really do need to see all three videos. So there's going to be three. I'm just doing the first one. So this is part one. This title is called The Abyss. Okay, so obviously that has got some all to do with end time stuff, hellish kind of things. But yeah, it's not scary. What I'm going to cover off with you. None of my dreams are ever really scary because I always ask for my dreams to be quite tame. So okay, so this was back on the 6th of May, 2025. Okay, and again, I'm gonna try as much as I can to actually just read my journal rather than getting all excited and going off topic. So let's go with this one then. So, and there's a couple of parts to this dream. So I'm not going to leave out stuff that I got that night because you never know with dreams as to whether that's relevant to the main dream. Because often the main dream, and I've mentioned this before, is the dream that you wake up to. So God will always put the dream that He most wants you to remember, normally as the last dream, so that you wake up and you're like, right, got to write that down. And the other stuff, if you remember it, it can be relevant. I've had plenty that have been relevant, and sometimes it's not. So this has a few parts to it. Is it a few parts or is it two? Yeah, three parts. But they're brief. Okay, so first one, yeah, so this one is I'm back in my childhood home, so where I spent about 20 odd years. I'm in my childhood home because I was there from pretty much from birth. Back in my childhood home, and we're in the lounge. We had some people over. I would say it's probably about 7 or 8 people in our lounge, our living room. Some sat on the sofa, some on the chairs. We're all gathered around to read a book. So it's almost like a book club kind of thing. But I think it was actually connected in some way to schooling. So I'm not sure quite what that means. I actually used it as an opportunity to share my testimony. So I started talking. I was not talking about the book at all. So I was like, I've got an audience, brilliant, you know. So I started an opportunity to go through my testimony. I started talking about how the Bible has completely changed me. And I was really honest about who I was before Christ versus how I am now. All the problems that got overcome without truly any effort on my part. The Holy Spirit just completely changes you, your thoughts, your desires, everything changes. You don't have to do anything. You just sit back and accept the changes that are coming. I told the group how, yes, I told the group, plus the teacher character, who actually seemed quite interested in what I was saying, because obviously I thought I'm just kind of trying to get this in, just to get the message out, whether you like it or not, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It was that kind of feeling. But actually, the teacher seemed quite interested, so I thought, okay, brilliant, right? Well, I'm kind of being allowed, I suppose, to continue. So I mentioned. How I'd found Christ was obviously reading a book that has been written over thousands of years. So it wasn't just the Bible, New Testament, Old Testament, was just dumped there. It was over hundreds and even thousands of years. All of these various different dreams have all been put together. Dreams? Start that again. All these different elements of history, and obviously there's some of it's poetic and stuff like that. So not all of it necessarily happened in certain ways. So again, you'll know those ones that aren't like that. So, but yeah, all of these kind of events, and all documented over thousands of years. But there's a common thread. So I've noticed this when I was reading. Is when you're reading, you feel like this is the same author. I mean, obviously there's certain different writing styles and different subjects, but there's something about the quality of what you're reading. It feels like it truly feels well. I mean, it obviously is. It's the Holy Spirit that inspired the writers. Obviously, people say, "Oh, the Bible was written by man, wasn't it?" Well, obviously, it's pen on paper. Like, what are you trying to prove? I don't understand what you're trying to say. Well, obviously, it didn't come from God because men wrote it, didn't they? Well, obviously, it doesn't make any sense, that argument, to me. I don't even get where they're coming from. Yes, obviously men wrote it, but they were inspired by the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit was guiding them and giving them revelation as they're writing it all down. You've got prophets that are seeing open visions and obviously writing it down. There's things that happen maybe, and there's a little bit of a gap before they write it down. But the Holy Spirit's telling them what to write, so not a problem. Not a problem. The Holy Spirit remembers what happened. So everything that's in the Bible, 100%, 100% of it, you read it, you understand it, it's accurate. There's nothing wrong with it at all. People also say, I'm going off on a tangent again, I knew I would do. Say, oh yeah, but there's many translations. Well, yeah, of course there is. Because if we wrote it down in the original language, that is a dead language, pretty much, but then we wouldn't be able to read it, would we? So obviously it's been translated, just like Harry Potter, I imagine, has been translated into multiple languages. It doesn't mean anything's lost. And even in the English, yeah, but we've had loads of different English versions. Well, yeah, it's to make it so it's accessible and easy for everybody to read. If it was written in a way that nobody understood it, then it wouldn't achieve its goal, which is bringing people to Jesus. It's just such a ridiculous way of, oh, there's been so many different interpretations, or books have been taken out. Yeah, they have, but because of they were found to be false, stuff like that, or they were found to not be inspired by God, so they've been taken out. That happens, but nothing that fundamentally changes the message of the Bible in any way. There's so many books. There's so much of a anyway. The reason the Bible has been changed is you get easy to read versions. You get ones that are a word for word translation. You get ones that kind of encapsulate the meaning of the text and give you some extra sort of notes around it to help you to understand, not to twist it, to help you to understand. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, which I always do. Yeah, so as I said, I was saying to them, yeah, the common thread, when I read it, I knew that there was one author. The author was God, Yes, obviously other people have written it down, but, that's something I realised in my real life, obviously, and realised in the dream that didn't realise, but I was trying to convey to the people. And I said, I have no idea, but I had a feeling that the teacher was actually an ex-boss of mine, Ian, who's unlikely to see this, but he was, for some reason, he's obviously an authority figure because he was my boss and he was in a position of being the teacher there. So I don't know why he was there, but it's the only dream I've ever had with him in it, I think. But and then so we're going to the second dream. This is actually again it's now a classroom setting. So rather than this would being almost like a teacher in a home setting, of kind of like a classroom, with it being a book review kind of book club sort of thing. This is now actually in a classroom. So I'm pretty sure, I was in my old school. We were all sitting at desks. So if you imagine a standard classroom, everybody's sitting on their own sort of desk. A couple of people maybe sharing a table, but in rows, and we're all staring towards the TV. It was like old style, like 1980s kind of like big chunky TV, and we're watching. As it goes, Jordan Peterson. Now, Jordan Peterson was somebody I was really into, because before I was saved, I was really into, because I was into the psychological stuff, understanding the mind and things like that. I actually found it quite captivating actually to watch, and he had a biblical series. So he was explaining the Bible. He was explaining it from a psychological point of view, because he's a psychologist. One of those. And he was going into, oh yes, it's all this says this, but what it really means is it's talking about it's the hero's journey, that where you do this, you do that, and then it's like all the fantasy novels you've ever written, ever read. They're like like the Bible and stuff like that. And I was just like, oh, this is an entry. It's an entry sort of way for me to get into the Bible. I wasn't Christian. I went to a Christian school. I didn't really have encouragement as such. I just went to a Christian school, which was very, very kind of bland. You would just sing hymns. You wouldn't ever learn about the Bible. It was just you'd sing hymns in the morning. That would be it. That's the true extent of what you would get in a Christian school. In my experience anyway. But what led me in was Jordan Peterson. So Jordan Peterson is who led me essentially to Christ because of he sparked my interest, and he created the bridge for me. He created that bridge between the academic stuff I was watching on YouTube. I was watching your typical Joe Rogan stuff, and I said Jordan Peterson, lots of different podcasts. I was watching all day, every day, pretty much while I'm working. I'm watching videos and stuff while I'm doing bits and pieces. But he was my entry into it because of his biblical series, and then I went into proper scriptures. Then I went into prophecy, and then I was hooked. I was in, and I was saved. So that was my journey in. That's a whistle-stop tour of my testimony, but I will do a testimony at some point. But we were watching Jordan Peterson on YouTube. It's the version where you see him when he's a bit younger. He's got a little bit more weight on him, and I know he had a lot of eating disorder problems at that time. He ended up being what do they call it? What's it called? Where you just eat meat. I can't remember, but he had to go to that because of all of his what's it called? I can't think of it. And immune system problems he's got flared up that caused him all sorts of problems and stuff like that. And his daughter had the same problem. She's now cured again from going that same route. But it was earlier on when he was a bit more fuller of weight, probably more like me. And he's pacing around and he's speaking to his class and he's just filming his class. That's his early stages before he became a big name. And we were watching this classroom. Volume, really, really low. Couldn't really hear the content. Only could really see the video, and the students all sort of turned into the teacher to indicate that they couldn't hear what was going on. And I said to the class, "Look, there's no sound. I can't hear anything that's being said." So tiny little snippet. I don't know what that was really meant to convey, really, other than maybe this testimony. But this me talking about it, essentially. You never know. That's why I've included it. Okay, so part 3. This is the main part now. We've got here 11 minutes. We've got here. So the main part of the dream, and this is far fuller and far more interesting. So I'm going to try and stick to the script. So it started with me being in our current home. We're on the landing part. So obviously the part upstairs that all of the other, we call it a landing in the UK. I don't know if it's called something different in the US, but it's the part of your house where all of your different rooms come off of. So I'm up there where all the rooms are connected to, and there's something. Oh, I've completely forgot about this. There's something flying around, and I didn't want it getting in the girls' room. In my girls' rooms, I've got 2 daughters and my wife in the property, and as I said, we've got the landing bit, which is just a small patch, and all the other rooms, all the doors come off of that. I'm running around, I'm closing all the doors. A bit like if you're a wasp or something in, you want to isolate it in an area so you can sort it out, get rid of it. This was the same thing. So I've closed all the doors because I desperately don't want it to get into any of the rooms. This will sound really bizarre. I'm literally reading it, but this will sound bizarre. But it sort of looked like a little bit like an acorn. Really odd, this thing. It's flying, it was green. It was, about that sort of size, about the size of an acorn, smallish acorn. Really, really odd. I tried to kill it, so I whacked it or something, and it had fallen to the floor, and then I'm stepping on it. I'm trying to crush this thing, trying to kill it by squashing it. But it's so hard. It's literally like trying to crush it's like literally trying to crush an acorn into a thick pile carpet. All you're doing is you're pushing it down further into the carpet, but you can't get enough sort of force on it to actually crush it. So I was really struggling to crush this weird green bug thing. It was more like a shelled sort of bug, I guess, than it was a fly. But obviously it was flying around. But so for background, so for transparency, that evening there was a small element where there were. Oh yeah. There was. I think it was a film I was watching. There were campers in a tent, and things. Yeah. It was like a bear attack. There was some campers that were in a tent, and they were under an oak tree, and there was acorns or things falling down, and they could hear things bumping off of the top of their tent. So acorns. Maybe that's where I got it from. Maybe that's the connection. Okay. Again, I'll gift that as something, potentially something that could have influenced me saying it looked like an acorn. As I tried to squash it, it just got just got pushed down into the carpet. I tried several times, but I couldn't kill this thing. I couldn't kill it. It kept surviving. And then oddly, then the dream shifts and it goes to showing me a guy in a high-rise apartment block. Okay, and this guy is barely breathing. He's just hanging on. You know, the breath is really laboured, very shallow breathing, and I'm thinking this guy's going to die basically. He's in all dark. It's during the day, but it's all darkness. So all the blinds or the curtains, whatever it is, they're all closed around him, and so it was not pitch black in there, but it was, you know, because obviously the light's lighting up the blinds or whatever it is to a certain extent. So there's a little bit of light coming in, but not much at all. So it's just that kind of low, very, very low level light. And the scene was sort of, yeah, kind of blue lit almost. So I could see some of the details of what was around him, you know, things like, you know, sofas and seats and tables and kitchen, all that kind of stuff. You know, it's like an open plan sort of apartment, it looked like. But there was a load of this kind of like dust in the air. It was just all hanging in the air all the time. It could have been spores or something like that. It was that kind of thing though, you know, where everywhere you look, there's just this, you can, as it catches the light, you can see all this stuff. And it was quite thick, quite a lot of it really. Yeah, it's all hanging in the air, and it was sort of similar. The third time that I've quoted Stranger Things. So when you're on the upside down, I mentioned, which is a parallel universe to our universe, is that everything is decay. So it's like literally almost like decay floating in the air. It was like that. So it was dark again, like the upside down, which is in perpetual darkness. That's what it reminded me of. And I was in the lounge, and this dust was also like a blanket, you know, all over the place. It was everywhere. And someone else came into the property and explained to me that it was some kind of a spore. So it was a spore. There we go. Some sort of a spore that had a certain illness or disease that was attached to it. You know, that they had come to see if they could help him because they'd obviously got some sort of reports, I guess, of this guy, you know, to investigate the property or whatever it was. And he ended up being transported away from the home to be isolated and to be treated, I assume. He was taken somewhere and held upright. So he's basically standing upright in a standing position next to actually a few other people that are also lined up standing next to him that had this same problem. So obviously, whether this is an early stage pandemic sort of thing or a very rare kind of problem, I'm not sure. So they were all heavily sedated. I mean, they were completely knocked out. I mean, when we came into this room as well, and he was just kind of like, you know, he's out of it anyway. You know, he's completely out of it. Barely breathing, as I said, just hanging on. And this is the same thing. So then it shows him standing up next to others, and they're all in a kind of very sedated state, totally unaware of their surroundings. So they've got no idea they've been transported from wherever they are. They're completely gone, a shell of the person that they obviously were, and they're strapped into this upright position. This particular guy would every now and then he'd cough. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? The spore thing, the problem, the illness. Obviously, we cough with colds and stuff like that anyway. And what happened was, though, he was coughing every now and then it was getting more and more frequent. And then he coughed, and then this thing crawled out of his mouth. So this is when it gets gross. So it was a little bit like you'd see in a horror movie, truly. You know, he was coughing and he was going, kind of retching, and this thing came out of his mouth. It was pretty big, you know. This was more than filling his mouth, you know. I mean, it would have been the thing that would completely suffocate him, you know. His whole throat, you know, would be completely filled as this thing came out. And I was surprised that he could even breathe at all. But I think what happened was this was lodged further down and was probably potentially had been gestated, you know, in his body from these spores, maybe. And it got to the point of it being birthed into the world, which was grim. It was grim. So he essentially Yeah, it was like he was a mule. I've said that it was like he was a mule. He would, this thing had been gestated in him. He'd just been used like a parasite kind of thing, and then had essentially birthed this thing, being kept alive by the host, this odd creature, and then so it could be birthed into the world. And it reminded me, yeah. It reminded me of a TV series called Fringe. It's a science fiction one. I absolutely love it. There's an episode actually where there's these immigrants that are coming across from China looking to come into the United States, and what they actually do is they do put in like minuscule kind of microscopic eggs, into, I can't remember how they get it, but they they end up ingesting it. All these people who are coming on, and they're basically during their boat journey to get to the US is the incubation period, and then when they get to the US, the timing's perfect. Pretty much, they come off the boat, and then this horrible thing comes out of them, and then they die as a result of giving birth, to this thing. So yeah, so they transported to the US, birthing these. Yeah, so what happens in the TV series with Fringe is they birth what looks like a squid. So it is. I mean, if you imagine, obviously, a squid is kind of like almost like a sort of shell-shaped sort of thing, and then you've got the tentacle sort of bits out the bottom. It was that kind of thing. All right, in the program The Fringe, and then as I said, they would just literally be used as mules, and then the bodies disposed of. They were just there, and in that particular series, it was all to do with. I think it was like it was a delicacy or something that they were farming, and they were using people to gestate it. It's pretty gross, but. This was essentially exactly the same thing. So what came out the body was pretty much the same thing. It was this weird squid thing. As mentioned, it zoomed out. Yeah, as mentioned, it zoomed out a little to show. Oh yeah. This is when all these people were lined up, of course, and it's coming out. It actually showed that the government was somehow part of this, allowing this to happen. So they were taking these people away, essentially under the guise of we're going to heal these people, we're going to inoculate them or do something to help them. But what actually they were doing, they were just letting it run its course. And this, as I said, it happened to show that the government was allowing this to happen and keeping this guy and others, as I said, for experimentation purposes and exploitation without their knowledge. I mean, obviously they didn't have their consent. They were just sent into this weird coma, and that was it. They couldn't consent. They were just taken away. It also, of course, had that same sort of vibe, of course, of the Alien, film series of chest bursters, but this was obviously out the mouth, and it wasn't as violent, obviously, as that. Um, but it did remind me of, obviously, in the Aliens films where they're kind of stuck against the walls, aren't they, while this thing is incubating in them. It was similar in that way, in that they were kind of just held vertically against the walls, sedated, and this alien then obviously comes out, or this thing comes out of them in Aliens, obviously, as I said, chestburster, and it zoomed out almost like now a bird's eye view. So now I could tell that I was now in a tower block. So I'm not sure if this is the same area as the guy's tower block that we've come from, and the skyline looked really similar to like a New York skyline. Okay, it had that kind of lots of different high rises, but this particular high rise where I'm pretty sure it's where the guy came from, to be honest. But it's like now it's like a bird's eye view looking down, looking straight down on the surrounding areas, and these towering buildings were pretty large, but there was almost like a you got Central Park, obviously, in New York. It wasn't that, but there was a little area where by just basically the building that it was seeing me above, there was actually this huge, I call it an abyss. Yeah, so it was a blue kind of bluish through to kind of like a mauvey purple kind of colour. It was really large. I'd say it was at least one block. Now I may be completely wrong on this, but a block I see is literally just, I don't know if it's a certain measurement. Again, it's the US, isn't it? I'm from the UK. Whether it's a certain measurement or it's literally the between the roads, in between, big high rises, and that's a block. And then it's, when you say it's 5 blocks away, it's essentially like 5 road things away, or 5 high buildings. That's how I interpret it. That may be completely wrong, but with that in mind, it would be about the size of a base, about the size, no, a bit bigger than the base of a big high rise. I mean, like a 30-story kind of big sort of building. So at the base, it would have been big, really big. And this big round thing, yeah, so it's bigger than the base of a skyscraper, and it had a quality to it, where I could see it was very, very deep. So it's a little bit like if you're looking at like a pond, a pond or a lake or something from the shore, and you can see it just kind of slowly going down and getting deeper and deeper and deeper, to the point where then the water's too deep and then you can't see the bottom. It was like that. So around the edges, I could actually see it kind of going down into a kind of funnel shape. That sort of thing. Like that sort of thing is how I kind of saw it. But as I said, in the centre it was too deep a colour that I couldn't see it, hence the abyss. Only the edges. And it kind of had like a coral kind of quality to it. So where you see coral and it's, rather than being solid, it's got kind of like lots of little holes in it. It was kind of like that. It looked like a coral sort of bit around the outside. But that's the quality of the kind of structure, I suppose, underneath it. Yeah, it looked like a super deep lake. I could see the sides, yeah, the edges that faded then to complete black. And I know instinctively it to be an abyss. I couldn't tell whether it was, drawing stuff in, almost like a wormhole, drawing stuff in, or not, or whether things were coming out. If you see what I mean, I couldn't see any direction of anything. I could just see this thing and this big, imposing, huge, like a as I said, like a lake, sort of shimmery, sort of look to it. Yeah, it looked really, really strange. So, thoughts and additions, because there were some bits and pieces I forgot when I was doing it. So the classroom one. So I forgot to mention. So the classroom one would be the second dream, wouldn't it? The second dream where the Jordan Peterson one. So the classroom one, I forgot to mention, as I was giving my testimony. Giving my testimony. Oh no, so this must be talking about the first one, so not the Jordan Peterson one, the other one. But I've said in the classroom one, I wasn't giving. Oh, it was, wasn't I? That's what I didn't mention. So I was giving my testimony in the first dream. In the second dream, I was also giving my testimony again to the classroom, because it was all quiet, and I had a captive audience. So I forgot to mention that I was giving my testimony to people, and people were just walking out, just leaving, and I was trying to get them to listen. Then the first part of the abyss dream, with the flying acorn-like creatures, made me think of obviously the locusts that were released from the abyss. Again, you see the connection there, which is why I did that in the abyss. Whatever it was, I was scared of it. I was instinctively scared of it, even though it didn't look scary, if that makes sense. It didn't have a stinger. It didn't have any horns or anything. It was actually kind of really smooth. It kind of looked like a pebble or something. It didn't look scary at all. And it was green. Green's not a scary colour. There was nothing that made, it wasn't like it was stripy or, had all kind of crazy colours that would kind of, like a lot of creatures do, want to warn off any kind of predator that wants to eat it. There was nothing about it that looked scary. I just knew this was something to be scared of. Okay. I said, yeah, like a bee or a wasp stinging you or something like that. It had that kind of, that was why I was quickly closing all the doors and bits and pieces in the rooms to trap it and make sure that nobody else was actually going to get hurt. I was trying to protect them. I had to stamp on it to try and kill it. And again, it made me think of what it describes of in Revelation when it talks about this plague of locusts that come out of the abyss. It talks about with breastplates of iron, so meaning that they're strong. They're a locust. You can squash a locust very easily. It's very frail, isn't it? You can easily squash a locust. But these things that it describes in the Bible are really strong, and you can't crush them. You can't kill them. That kind of thing. They torment people. I tend to be, despite this dream, I do and it talks about these locusts that will go out and they will torture people for a certain amount of time. Because I remember seeing something, and it was the time frame that locusts actually live for is the exact amount of time that these locusts are on the earth for. So I'd have to Google that. I can't remember it. But if you look it up, how long do locusts live for? Or even better yet, look in the Bible, see what it tells you. Is it like 4 months? Is it 6 months? Something like that. Around that sort of time frame. But basically what will happen is these locusts will terrorize people, and it says that they have tails like scorpions. So if you think of obviously scorpion sting as being incredible pain, to the pain where people, in extreme circumstances just want to kill themselves. It's so bad. And it actually talks about in the Bible how people will want to die, but they won't be able to. So there's loads of speculation where it says, people say, is it because they're prevented from dying? There's some sort of supernatural thing that God won't allow them to die in some way. People might be stabbing themselves or shooting themselves and they won't die. I don't know. I really don't know. So there's a lot of obviously in Revelation especially, there's a lot of symbology. And when I've always thought, not always, but I've come to the feeling that when it talks about locusts, I think it's talking more about, when you see locusts, what do you see? You see a cloud of them, a swarm of them. So I think it's more talking about the quality, given that obviously Revelation is very symbolic. It's not actual locusts it's talking about, because it says that they have the heads of men and long hair and stuff. I mean, put that on a locust, like, what are you talking about? It doesn't look anything like a locust. And when people try and look at that and go, oh yeah, this is what it looked like, well, that just, I know it's coming out of the abyss, which is essentially hell. It can look whatever it look like, you want it to look like, because it's not something from Earth. It's, but I personally think it's talking about the quality. So I think when it's talking about locusts, it's talking about either what they do, which locusts, what do? They go around and they just go from area to area, just causing absolute destruction, ravaging people's food supply and all that kind of stuff. And they just roam from place to place, just destroying. And it could represent that. I personally think, and there's some extra biblical stuff beyond the Bible that kind of gives a bit more information and context to it, is I personally think it talks somewhere, I can't recall where, it talks about the angels are, the fallen angels, sorry, let's put this another way. The angels that rebelled or went with Satan. So 1/3 went with Satan, 2/3 stayed with God and in heaven, and still do to this day. There was a big rebellion. Satan, Lucifer, was leading that rebellion. Okay, so in that, a third essentially were with him. So there's what that means in numbers: millions, hundreds of thousands. I don't know, but a huge amount that were rebelling. And that a certain proportion of angels did get locked up, and I seem to remember this is because of someone asked for it or something like that. So I can't remember what that is. Certain things fade, but what I'd heard somewhere was, a large proportion that say, for argument's sake, 90% of that third have been locked up, and they're not on the earth. They're not causing problems. That when these come out of the abyss, this is all of these fallen angels then being released upon the earth. And obviously they've been locked up for a long time. They're keen to get out and cause some havoc and get back at humans, because this sort of fallen angels, all that kind of stuff, demons that roam the earth and stuff like that, they absolutely hate us. I mean, I've had personal experience so many times of this, absolute hate for us. So any opportunity to cause us harm, destroy us, get us off track, perfect, I'll go for it. So I think that's what it means when it talks about the locusts. It's talking about the sheer numbers, so stacks and stacks of them that just flow out of this abyss. There is actually, saying that, there is a film, isn't there? I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, I think it's called Silence. I think it's called Silence, but that has something where we're doing some mining or something like that, and they like move a rock or something, and then there's all these kind of bat-like things that come out and they kill people. But you see them swarm out of the ground, essentially out of an abyss. So I think it's like that. I think that's kind of how it's gonna look. But again, this is all personal. There's this everybody has their opinions on things. It's not going to divide us to the point where we start setting up new churches for it. Okay, so these are just little things, little opinions, little ways that we interpret things that are not fundamental to anything that affects faith, anything that causes problems we've got in any way. These are just our interpretations. We do our best to understand the scriptures as best we can, especially with something as symbolic as obviously Revelation. Yeah, so as I said, these squid things that were coming out with tentacles and stuff, no idea why, but it felt demonic to me. I mean, these felt otherworldly. Again, you've got potentially this abyss that's right outside. Was it, the start of some of these things or some of the things that would happen? Again, I thought it was a good visual, interesting elements to it. Again, remember this is part 1 of 3. So this is End Times. I'm going to try and put I'll just title it as End Times Part 1, End Times Part 2, with their individual titles. The next one is going to be called The Temple. Okay, and then the third one is actually going to be called something like DJ Set or MP3 player, something like that, which will sound really strange, but these all pull together in a crazy, crazy way. The next one, The Temple, is my absolute favourite. It's one of my absolute favourite dreams ever, and I've got something like about 120 dreams that I've logged, and I'm working my way through. This is one of my absolute favourites. Okay, so I'm going to do that next. Thanks for your time. Hopefully you found that interesting, and the next one will be coming soon. Speak to you soon.